shh. We will. Maybe.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. We're gathered here to talk about the current state of comics, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we'll talk a little bit later on before we head out of here about ignition. But today we're going to touch a bunch of topics that we think are causing the decline of comics. And it's my opinion that it's just not solely content. It's not solely the agenda that are in mainstream comics. For instance, we all talk about the Marvel agenda being closely tied to the left. To me, that's not it at all. That's a big. That's This is a pie, and I'd say that's probably a quarter of the pie. So we're going to touch on all these subjects. But I'm gonna introduce to you some guests here. You know my co-host Chris. Chris, say hi.
Hello.
Chris, what are you working on? Tell us where people can find you and what you're doing.
You can find me at on Twitter at Last Snow Leopard, and I'm working on a comic book series called The Last Snow Leopard. It's amazing, isn't it? It's very, I'm sure I just confused people with that one, and I'm trying to write a horror story that may or may not ever come to light, but that's what I'm working on right now.
And my other guest is Todd DeWolf. Oh no, I can't believe I just did
Hey, how you going?
this. Mr. DeWolf. I know you from Chester Busby's channel, Alerty, and why don't you tell everyone a little bit about what you do for him, and a little bit about where they can find you, and anything else that you want to plug here.
Yeah,
That's fine.
sure. You know, it kind of goes back to why Fanspeak came around in the first place, and that was watching Comicsgate, watching Ethan, Mitch, and Mike, and we said, hey, let's get out of the chat all the time, and let's voice some our own opinions as well. And Chester wanted to get together some people that had ideas because we wanted to throw ideas not just to those guys, but there was so many other people that were coming around, and so we thought that these other artists and writers might want to know what a fan just looks at when they open up Indiegogo to say whether or not they're just going to hit the back button or not, and from our perspective and our eyes, in order to get us to make that sale. And what we've designed now has grown a little bit bigger. And what we do also, I guess what I do is try to take that middle of the road, maybe common sense perspective. Always looking at things from the other person's shoes is kind of, because there's a lot of things that have happened where the term like SJW is thrown around, and sometimes they even need to take that perspective of why are they doing what they're doing in order to get their point across, and how can we understand that better sometimes. So that's what I try to do on the Fanspeak channel.
Tank has also joined us. Tank is an artist and creator. He's got a couple projects. I'll let you introduce yourself to the people who will be listening and watching this.
Well, thank you, Todd. I am Tank for Weston Duggan Star, Tank Ferret Art, the Tank Ferret himself. I have a couple of things I'm working on right now, both of which involve the Salacious Scalpel Zero. Yes, she will be in a story from Tales from Beyond the Gate called Simon Says, a hive mind horror science fiction story. And she will also be debuting early next year in her own self-titled comic, Scalpel Zero, where she is the apex predator.
Also, we have Manny from Good Dog Press. Manny, why don't you tell everyone where you can be found beyond Good Dog Press? Obviously, that's your own channel. And talk a little bit about the Unbreathable Skunk Girl.
Oh, thank you, Todd, for having me on your show. Hi, I'm Manny from Good Dog Press, and you can find me all over Good Dog Press, Twitter, uh, YouTube, DeviantArt, and my website, gooddogpress.net. And yes, I am the creator and artist and writer and everything on the Unbreathable Skunk Girl, which is going to be a throwback to the '90s bad girl comics. So of course, it's a takeoff on Squirrel Girl, but it's going to be fun. You know, it's going to be sexy. And
Ooh, sexy.
yeah, sexy, smexy, as Tank likes to call it, smexy.
That's right. She's bringing Smexy back. What's up, DeWolf? Hey, Chris.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi, guys.
Tank's today is was well. Today is your day, a big day for you, but didn't go as planned. But that's okay. We're Tank's jumping around from channel to channel because this was supposed to be his first day of his own programming and bringing you content. Um, but that's all right. We'll get to that a different day, and but we're here to support you. So we're gonna have him come on all of our channels and talk about the same things he was gonna talk about. But before we do any of that, the idea of today's show was to talk about the current climate of comics. So let's talk a little bit about price. Why don't you guys, I'll start with Chris. What's your feeling on the current climate as far as price goes?
It's inordinately high for what you're getting out of it. Like, if I'm going to spend $5 on something, I need to be able to justify that with a return of investment. It's just like if I go and spend $5 at McDonald's, I want to get exactly what I want out of it. And it doesn't have to be perfect every time, but it has to be edible. And with a lot of the comics, like back when I was collecting comics, it would be I'd spend like 60 or $70 every week like a moron, but you had a higher chance of getting more good than bad. Like even if something this was when Image was coming out, so you had like Savage Dragon and everything. So you're like that sort of comic where you're getting more and more action. Everything's a good investment. Now you go in there, you're spending $5 a pop, and you're like, oh crap, is this going to be a dud? Because the writer could just have an off day, but the art isn't always good either. So you could have a complete dud. Like if you look at Squirrel Girl, if you have a bad artist and a bad writer at the exact same time, it's like the worst thing imaginable. But you just wasted $5 on it, and there's no chance of returning that.
Well, let me ask you, how much money do you spend monthly on comics?
Like right now, I'm on a super tight budget, so I only get maybe 2 comics a week, and that's just like on a good week. A lot. I'm my mom's caregiver, so I don't always get a chance to go out and do it like every week. So like I don't even know when New Comic Day is anymore. I just go to and just pick stuff up, and like the guy who's there, he just goes, oh yeah, this is new, and that could be like 3 days ago. I don't know. He just lets me know what's going on.
Now, the last time you spent money you thought was well spent was on what?
Honestly, it was a Batman comic, and I can't even remember what it is at this point, because I like after I read them, I actually give them to I'm like right by the Ronald McDonald House, so I actually just donate them right there for like not only kids, but anybody in the family who goes in there. So I honestly, what was it?
That's really nice, though, by the way.
yeah. If you're gonna review, that's a good deal.
I think it. Don't quote me on this, but I think it was White. It was the White Knight series, and I can't remember. Like,
Oh, Sean Gordon Murphy. Yeah.
yeah, and I hate saying it this way, but my memory is absolutely awful. So like, I could actually go up and pick up that comic again, and until I'm like 3 or 4 pages into it, I will have forgotten what I just like that I've already read it. So for me, this is like I I get entertained and then I'm like, wee, and
How
I'm
can you call
gone.
yourself a writer with that kind of retention?
What are we talking about anyway?
Price. What you felt was good value for your money. Why don't we go to DeWolf? DeWolf,
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about a price and how you feel about it.
Yeah, I was not into buying comics. Let's see, about over 6 months ago. It just was not something that I was doing because of the comic industry and what had happened, and I had gone back to my comic store, and it just was not a good experience. And I actually spent time going over to the comic shelves quite a bit because some of them are also comics and games, and I go in and look at games a lot. So over the years, I had been going over to the comic shelves and not buying, and one of those is the actual price point because I think I would have about $40. That might be when you got a family and everything else. So anywhere from 40 to 50 bucks. 50 bucks gets me a really good game or two, depending upon what they are, and some and or other accessories and comics included. So with that being the case, I would bypass them because I would pick them up, and yeah, from $5 to $7, and I flip through it, and first off, it's the art and the story, and nothing jumps out at me. Covers aren't good. I haven't heard anything because marketing. I assume maybe we'll get into the marketing problems that comics is having. So the marketing is bad, and so I just move away because I can also get a paperback book for $5 or $10, and I can read through an entire book and get that much more of a story than I can from just one single issue of a comic book. And that's something to consider there. And then of course now there's the graphic novels, and that right there became something that was pretty cool because I didn't have to worry about bouncing back and forth between all these different issues, since that happened to be that's the end part of your story there, and break it apart and have multiple different spider titles. So instead I can go look at a graphic novel, and that right there, that would fit within the budget, whether it was $20 or $30. That's well spent because all that's together, and I can just start reading through it. So I think the price point of the probably pretty good, and that's what we're seeing with comics game, and we'll just say the Indiegogo campaigns. They come out with $35 to $25. They give you 60 pages to 100, and that's a pretty good price point when you consider everything, because I don't know what I'm going to be getting with those piece ones, and they've gotten so flaky in who's writing and what's writing in the modern comics. And so yeah, I think price wise, and I also like the newsprint type style. When I grew up, it was $1.50 in a pair of companies that you can get the book. And depending upon the art, the art in some of those actually still is pretty good looking. You know,
Well, I agree. Although the quality of coloring is what really made comics take a huge leap. I mean,
that's true.
so sometimes that I mean, you could do the page digitally, and then you see it printed out on print. And only because I have an experience with this, there's such a vast difference of
Right.
your array of colors. Anytime you do any kind of, for instance, my character's a flame character. Anytime you do any kind of effects with flames and you use screen layers and stuff like that, you're going to get such a washout. One, you won't get that glow. You will see a color hold on the black, but you won't feel that sort of glow or that heat coming off the page, so to speak.
Right. And in that case, you really better have a good writer with a good story, and you better have a good artist that can pull that off. Otherwise, you're making me spend $7 on, average to under par material. Right.
Oh, absolutely. what's the last thing that you bought? You felt like, wow, I got my bang for my buck.
Wow. I grabbed up a couple of back issues. I did my research on some that I didn't have, in my collection that I had pulled of out of the boxes and go through so the kids can get involved. I can get involved in what's going on in the community. And I said, I need some of these. So, and they were back issues. And even though I spent $3 on one that used to be $1.50, that's actually still a good price considering what it is and how that I wanted to finish up some of the stories of that I had missed before.
Now, Tank, you have any thing you'd like to add about price? And because you actually look into a lot of this stuff, I know that. So I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Well, I do a lot of shopping, and for a newsprint quality on a short run, um, you should be able to offer a cover price of no more than 250. If you do your shopping carefully, and of course, you always get your reviews, you have to spend a little extra money, a little seed money, to make sure that you get a physical print, a proof print in your hand. And another thing, when you're printing, you want proof sheets as well. You don't just want a stapled copy, you want the proof sheets, which are uncut, gigantic sheets of paper, which the shipping is going to kill you on that as well. But this is something that you need in your hands, because that allows you to look at all the pages laid out right in front of you. You don't have to flip through the book. You can look at the whole thing as an overview, and really have a critical eye, because both um, your your test sheet and your test copy, both your proof sheeting and your proof copy, should be the same. That's another thing you're looking for, is consistency at that point. Okay, this is what it looks like. Proofs are always awesome, because if your stuff ever becomes famous and stuff, that's the stuff that's going to sell at Christie's for a lot of money. I'm just telling you that right now. If you play your game right, when you're old and gray, or when your kids are old and gray, they can go ahead and pawn that stuff off at Christie's for a good lifetime or two's worth of income. Um, so always keep your proofs. But you should be able to, if you go now, Alterna. I'm going to speak on Alterna. I don't usually plug a whole bunch of people. I love Peter Samedi. He's a great guy. He's always been a real good friend to me. And so I like to return that favor. Peter Samedi, he's got Alterna Comics, and he sells his comics for $1.50, which I've tried to tell him many times that he's not selling them for enough. $1.50 is too cheap.
Yeah, I agree.
For a black and white, $2. For a color comic, $2.50, because then you can get two for $5, which in today's economy, that's fine. Because when we were kids in the '80s and we had a $5 allowance, that's a $20 allowance today.
Yeah, go with
That's
like 230. You add the tax in. That's perfect for a $5 allowance. Yeah.
yeah. So you got you go for you try to hit that 250 mark. And here's one of the secrets. It's the rule of thirds in printing. 1/3 of the cost is your house cost to produce the actual stuff, and to print, right? Then you double that, and that's your retailer price. That's your that's your bulk order retailer price. So the more copies retailers buy, the closer to that price they get. And then half of that, which is, this is where we come into the rule of thirds. So half of that again, so we're at 3 times the original price. That should be your cover price. And of course, you round it cosmetically. And it's kind of like, it all depends. You're rounding within 10 to 15 cents usually. So it's something that you can, at those profit margins, you can actually afford to take a little bit of a hit to your profit margin on that. So when you're doing your shopping and you're doing your pricing, do that. Now, there's different methods to do this. You can actually do paid advertising in your books if you can get enough circulation. You want at least 5,000 and whatnot, and that can help your costs on your back end, and that actually helps your price. This is one thing I was talking about earlier on Good Dog Press, was that I am so upset that when I pick up a Marvel or DC or IDW, and it's starting to happen more and more in like Dark Horse and other indie publishers, where I pick up one of their comic books and I have almost equal ad space as I do to my content. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
And it's so intermittent that it breaks the flow of the story. So even if the story was good, I've been taken out of my rhythm. You know, if you go look at what Jim Shooter and Stan Lee were doing, is the ads they put in the middle of their comics, those were the big sheets that you gloss over, so you don't even pay attention to them anyways. They're too busy. Or they put Marvel themed stuff, or stuff that was related to Marvel products. Like they put the Star Wars stuff in there because they had the Star Wars comics. You know, it was all related to in-house projects, so you didn't get pulled too far out of your story at that. And then they put O.J. Simpson selling his was it the Acme boots on the inside cover or on the inside of the back cover.
Yeah,
Yeah. Somebody doing like a Hostess Twinkie thing, but it was like the Incredible Hulk was like.
Oh, those are brilliant.
Oh,
If you can wrangle an endorsement deal like that, like Marvel did, that was brilliant. If you can do that,
but
dude.
even if you just do it for instance, even if Scalpel Zero is ordered by 5,000 individuals, right? So you have 5,000 different people to send this book to, and say you even give it a 3-month lead time. Well, you can't go to your local, anything local, and say, hey, would you like to have an ad in my book? Because it may only go to one local person. It has to be international. It has to almost be global. And that's true.
It has to be something tied to the internet.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, maybe that would
work. Their hub has to be on the internet. So, and you're not going to be getting a lot of money. You're going to be doing like what Peter Samedi does with Alterna. If you want to take out a book at any one of his titles, it's $100 for a full page. And he has a decent reach, and that's a fair price for the reach of the titles.
Oh, I agree. That is a fair price, but I just, I was just trying to think of those type of things that.
Oh yeah.
That I would do. That I'd be, go to somebody and say, hey, let's, obviously I'd go to Pixel Trader and say, hey, let's put an ad for what's coming up in, Indicron, the changes. Like, let's show the world that there's such a thing as Indicron that maybe they don't know, And obviously I would do that for nothing. But I'm trying to think of other things like that I would be willing to, promote each other's books. You know what I mean?
Now,
obviously.
Here's another thing when it comes down to price. And price, you're also including shipping into the profit margin that you're expecting your retailer to get, right? Because all the prices of stuff, of course, snowball into the initial price of the product, cost of the product, I should say. So when when you've got advertising in there, that helps to offset the cost of your book, which is why another reason why I'm so angry at Marvel and DC, because their books are outrageously expensive. At least DC said $4 is as high as we're going. I'm like, I'll give you guys that. All right, whatever. But when I'm paying $5 for a book and I feel overwhelmed with the content of advertising, that's not cool. That's not okay. And it's because they're trying to make up for lost sales with more ad space, which is bad marketing, bad business, bad. Roll up the newspaper, smack on the nose. No, bad. You know, advertise like all right. So I do have advertising in my book, but I have incidental advertising. I have product placement. So I've taken things like the Aquabats, and I've got Alterna Comics, and I've got Skunk Girl, and I've got Space Barista, amongst many other intellectual properties that are product placed throughout my story, which is easy for me to do because I have a very urban story. There's lots of ads going on in the background.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sort of
People walk past soda machines.
like I Am Legend, how they had the Batman, Superman.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got you.
incidental product placement. Now, the reason why this is important, and then at the back of the book, I've got in the frame that this product placement first appears, I have a little, like a little number one, number two, and so forth. And these are reference numbers because when you get towards the back of the book, there's one page that is just a reference sheet, and it's all numbered, and it has all the media information. It says, this was based off of that, and this is where you can find that.
So you have a key, basically, a key of
Exactly,
reference. Yeah,
a key reference page. And I did this very specifically because I am circumventing media mail rights.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
You cannot have purposeful advertising unless it's just for more of the same of that, and still qualify for media mail, which is super duper cheap compared to regular mail rights, especially if you're shipping internationally. And once again, we come down to total cost put onto the customer. So that's less cost to the customer. So that way, when you're selling overseas, one of the things that when you're trying to reach overseas distributors and overseas markets is that your book's going to cost more in their country because it had to be imported, and it costs a certain amount per item of its weight to ship over there.
So let me ask you, break it down for us, because I'm sure you're talking about walking in the post office with your stuff and saying, I have this, my product needs to go out via media right, or what do you call it, media rights
Media
pricing.
mail.
Media mail pricing is a different pricing, obviously. So the stampage is a little different, is what it sounds like you're saying.
Yes, media mail is it's like this. A lot of people have problems with media mail with their local post office because they fall technically within the guidelines put out by the United States Postal Service, or their local national postal service. But the local post office, the local postmaster general, interprets it as, no, this does not qualify. And that does not mean that you can't qualify for media mail. That means you need to go to a different post office.
Okay.
So, and once again, you have to figure this in as an entrepreneur. Remember, you're responsible for all expenses. So the wear and tear on your vehicle, the mileage, the gas, all of that stuff, the transportation fees that you have to do, the hours that you have to put into your stuff, that all has to be taken into consideration. It's one thing I cannot stress enough to people wanting to launch a crowdfunding or entrepreneurial endeavor is that you have to already have your business structure in and just have your name on all of those posts. So that way, when you hire somebody, you can just hand off a single job. You're like, all right, cool. Hey, kid. All right, so you need a job for the summer. I need you to stuff these boxes to help me fulfill my thing. I'm paying you minimum wage or piecemeal, whichever one's better. And either way, your expenses are covered, and that encourages the employee to work faster because the piecemeal's worth more. So if they get in that, it's no quota, but hey, there's bonuses. And we can talk on that. That all goes into price as well. So when you're considering price, you have to factor in a lot of things. And one thing that the big entertainment companies, and I say they're entertainment companies, they're not comic book companies anymore. They transcended the mortal realm into the world of entertainment. to the silver clouds of Hollywood, Marvel and DC. They're not comic companies anymore, and they're bloated, and it shows because they can't pay their bills. Well, not in house. They have to take from the parent corporation in order to pay the bills. And all parents who have children who mooch money off of them know that you don't like your kids to be mooching money off of you. So, indie people, when you're pricing your stuff, do your shopping very carefully.
Just so
Take
people,
into
wait, let me
yeah.
back up. Just so
I was just
people
going to
know,
summarize. Yeah.
when Disney bought Marvel, there was a 20 cent or 20% cut on everybody. Didn't matter who you were in the business. It was a 20% cut across the board. So
Yeah.
if you were Adam Hughes or you were, anybody like that who was doing, does sort of freelance work around all the different big companies, your rates changed as soon as they bought them.
Yep.
Let's see if
Oh yeah.
Manny has anything to say about price because he lives in Hawaii and obviously I wonder if there's any kind of difference as far as how comics are received and comic book stores are over there. If they're I mean obviously there's a well why don't you tell us?
Well, for the current comic books, I mean, it's the same price. I mean, that's all it is. We don't have as many comic shops as we used to have. I think I can only think of 4 comic book shops now, and there used to be at least 10 before. I mean, so you had a wide variety of comic book shops, and they were primarily comic book shops. You go into the comic book shop nowadays, it's toys. I mean, there's a lot of toys, a lot of Funko Pops, a lot of card games, and then you have the section of the comics. So it's kind of sad. And like we were talking about on my show, I mean, as a kid, I mean, obviously I'm a little older than you guys. $3 would buy me 7 comic books for the weekend. You know, $3. That's 40 cents for the comic price. So I had a full weekend. And of course, I was reading when the comic books are awesome. I mean, I got to buy the Dark Phoenix saga. I got to buy the Daredevil stuff. I was lucky. I got to buy the JLA with George Perez, John Byrne stuff. So I was kind of like the second coming of the golden age. So I was super lucky. So when you guys are asking what comic book did I remember the best, I mean, we got to go back to The Killing Joke and Watchmen. To me, was great comics. So there's nothing really that turns me on now in comic books. It's kind of sad when I read the newer comics and what happened to my heroes. They're just. I know it changed, but my favorite comic book character is Captain America. I still have the original one that I bought off the newsstand as a 12-year-old child, and now he's a Nazi. It just doesn't work for me. So, yeah, it's kind of strange, but yeah.
You make me think of a point just by what you said, and that as far as um, what a store's makeup is obviously
Mhm.
not comics anymore.
No, it's
Well, it
not.
can't be, right? But collectability has changed. You made me think about collectability because when we were young, we were collecting something. We knew
Right.
it, but now, if there was just recently a X-Men issue #1 that came out. Well, if you don't have Joe Quesada's variant, your collectability is almost nothing. So these variant covers, the glut of them really hurts the collectability because just getting the regular old issue, even if you could go walk into your local package store and buy it or a newsstand store and buy it, if you don't have the right cover, then you have the lowest value, the lowest common denominator of all those things.
Yeah.
And that hurts collectability because
Great.
there's something to be said about collectability.
Well, I
Well,
was a
I oh, I'm sorry. I actually have a real quick thing to interject on variant covers and my position on them. Is that I actually plan to to do international stuff.
hmm
And I was thinking, well, based on which country it was printed in, it'll have a different cover, something that fits the local culture, and still matches with what's inside the story. And another different thing I was thinking on variant covers was that when I do my Indiegogo, that'll be the first print. So I was thinking second print will just have a different cover.
Oh yeah.
So
You,
that way
yeah,
it has some collectability.
I really perked up when you were saying different countries. Yeah, make a cover, even if you had more covers in one country, make them a gimmick. Anytime that I sit down and to use a different media and watch America's Got Talent, the person that catches my attention is always the one.
Yes. Something that you can relate to.
Right.
They can hook you, draw you in.
So say Skunk Girl wearing a kilt.
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not sure if that's necessarily, but let's say you yourself know that you can print a certain number of these and you can put them in a kilt, and that you can sell those specifically if you yourself like to go to Renaissance festivals, right? So you got the Ren Fair version, but to get it, you have to go buy them at the Ren Fair. It's just
Exactly. They're the limited items. The general print run that has the standard cover. That's what you want the comic book to remembered as its cover. And the other stuff, you make it situational.
yeah, and so the collectability is going to rise on that one exponentially.
You
I
guys
think
are
that's kind of going like getting the cart before the horse, though. Of I want to like, and I think it's a good idea of having the variant covers like by locale, but it seems to me like it's planning ahead for a situation that, like, if that situation doesn't get triggered, the idea, like, I like the idea. It's just I hate the idea of getting so excited about something. Like, I'm doing that with my own comic of like, I'm so excited about this and I'm like getting so far ahead, and it's like I have to reel back the reality of this isn't a thing that just can happen. It's like the stars have to align. And it's like I like the idea, but I'm like, what happens if, and I don't even know what the situation where it would prevent that. It's like you have each little step and you're like, okay, I want to do this thing, but then you like gotta, for me, I'm like, I gotta pull it back a little just in
because
my,
what you're talking about is you're the machine, right? There's nobody behind you doing your promoting. There's nobody behind you doing your procurement. There's nobody behind you fulfilling things. So you're that person. So you gotta go, what what are all these other things? What hurdles might I come across by wearing all these other hats? So you become sort of a business owner, even though you're not starting a LLP or anything like that. But you have to think about, man, I better give myself some lead time because who knows, what kind of things I might run into.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the LCS, obviously. The number of shrinking comic book shops across the globe is probably one of the bigger things that hurts comics unit wise than anything else. I mean, granted, kids may not, they may be buying video games or getting their entertainment on YouTube or stuff like that, but still, once you get down to what are we in, like 800, I think, are left in the United States, somewhere along that lines. Once you go from 8,800, you can see how that would put a dent in any sales. So why don't we go around and talk a little bit about that?
Well, I don't think it's a problem with the local comic shops. It's why did they get out of the department stores? My first comic books were bought from a department store. I mean, I used to go to the mom and pop store down the street. They had comics. So I didn't go to a comic shop to buy my comics. It was all over. So once they got rid of those, mom and pop store and the department stores, that's was the decline. Yeah, it worked for a while. You became a niche now instead of being open to the whole public. Now you're just in a comic book shop. Yeah, that would kill it. I mean, so it's just been slowly going downhill, unfortunately.
but that's a huge number. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look over the last 10 years, I think we've gone
Mhm.
from it just in the last 10 years. I think it was like 3,500 to 800. That's huge.
Well, what you have to look at is that the larger stores, like in major metropolitan area, like if you look at New York City, you're going to have success. I don't even know about successful, but you're going to have comic book shops that don't struggle, and it's because people have. I don't even want to say disposable income, but you're going to have the collectors who kind of they're seeding the business by buying like back issues or something. So like let's say the shop bought like a an estate sale, like some guy just keels over and he had this huge ass collection. Well, they'll buy that and then they'll you have the collectors who know that this comic book store has the collectible issues. Like they'll have I don't know about any specific like X-Men 1 or a really early action comics or something along those lines. So they're able to be self sustained because they have the capital there because the collectors come to them. But if you look at like the local shops who are almost stuck because of like leases and being unable to expand, they can't put in like a lot of gaming. They can't put in um, a separate sections in there for like some of the places in St. Louis have tabletop gaming nights where you'll have people just come in there and they're selling like food and drink and everything along those lines. So they're diversified enough to kind of stay in business. But when you have these little tiny shops that just have like the folding table in the middle of the store that's like probably about 20 feet long, but it's just nothing but back issues and everything along those lines. They're not good. They are going to die, and it's not good that they're dying, but it's one of those things where that bit of capitalism of you either are growing or you are dying is like evident right in the comic book industry. And you're not getting like when you're charging $5 a pop on a comic, a brand new comic, you're not going to get those people who come in and buy a brand new X-Men comic, but then buy back issues as well. So it's like they aren't going to be making money on that. It's not. It's kind of like video games. They don't make money on consoles. They make money on peripherals and the video games. So if you're charging too much for the video games, people aren't going to be buying them. It's going to eat away at any profit you got.
Anybody else want to talk about what's going on locally with their area?
Well, I can tell you why my local comic store is not doing well. And like they're really hard to find, even though they're in broad daylight. The place is a dungeon. The people are friendly, and it's a nice, atmosphere, but it's messy, and it doesn't smell all that great. Um, you know, it doesn't even smell like newsprint or game boxes, dude. It's got the subtle hint of gamer funk, and my nostrils are blasted
Ugh.
by activity in war. So I have a very, very bad sense of smell, and if I can pick it up, it's funky. Um, so, and they don't advertise. They don't pull out. They have this wonderful. They do Friday Night Magic and they do games
Oh
and stuff.
God!
And the comics are shoved in the corner, and it's almost all Marvel and DC, and it's all schlock.
And what does that even make for a store though? Because I know a store that does that here. And I'm wondering why. Like, are you charging admission on a Friday and Saturday? I don't understand what that makes for your store.
Well,
You selling
the
food?
yeah, they hope to they hope to sell starter packs and booster kits, booster packs of Magic the Gathering cards. It's their primary source of income right now is Magic the Gathering, and they're the comic store. that has the comic shoved in the corner. I go there and I talk to the owner and I'm like, well, have you guys heard about Alternative? They're not doing their job as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and finding out what are the good products to sell, what looks good. What can they get at a decent price and push out the door? What can they get new people into the store with? And we have an issue. We put on our deer hunter cap and grab a magnifying glass and start following some footprints. And we see that there's 2.5 million, over 2.5 million disaffected comic book readers.
Yeah.
The comic book fan base is over 3 million strong. Over 2.5 million of them are disaffected readers. They like comic books. They go out and watch all the movies. They watch the TV shows. You have tons of people who are way into. You have millions, scores of millions of people in the United States alone that are into comic book properties because that stuff is hot. Judge Dredd, to include Judge Dredd and The Tick and stuff like that. Those are indie titles. Those are underground titles. Those were like nothing. Nobody knew nothing about those comics when they first got started.
Yeah.
You're right.
One of the things that you and Chris both talked about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say we follow these footprints, right? And we follow that. What Manny said. We don't find the comic books at our local newsstand anymore. We don't find them in the periodical section where they used to be. And we go back to, okay, so who's in charge of making sure that those get there? And we always point the finger at Marvel and DC, and that's the wrong direction. We need to be looking at Diamond Distribution, who has a monopoly on comic book distribution. In 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that Diamond Distribution was not a monopoly, and this is a grievous misjudgment of the court case that was brought to them, because Diamond Distribution is the only viable comic book distributor.
Well, why don't they advocate for putting them in CVS's and Walgreens and stuff? That could be up to them. If they want to
They could, and unfortunately, we come back to, they're the only source, and they are very picky about what they put in there, and they want recognizable names. That's all they care about.
I can tell
Are
you
you recognizable?
I can tell you why they aren't in grocery stores, CVS, Walgreens, pretty much anywhere anymore.
Was that?
People steal that crap. People will steal that crap and they will damage it. Because if you've ever gone to the magazine section of a grocery store, that stuff looks like somebody was eating it. I started working at a grocery store and I was looking at spaces for hey, if maybe because it's a chain, I could go and see kind of where we could put it. And is the store I work for? I'm not saying it's high end, but it's a more classic looking grocery store, not mom and pop, but where you the whole thing of our job is you make the customer feel welcome at all times, and you have people coming in and the magazines are all ripped up to hell. You have people stealing them, and if you're a distributor, the section gets smaller and smaller constantly, and you have to pay to put that stuff in each store. So it's like shelf space, like a can of corn. Green Giant had to pay to put that in the store. They had to pay for each little section, each type of corn you have to pay for that, and it's an almost impossible task to get that stuff. Yeah, you can get the comics in there, but you're going to be paying a ton of it, and it's just people are going to steal it, especially at Walgreens and CVS. It's kids are going to grab it, adults are going to grab them. It's just it's a bad area, and it's just one of those things where you don't want it to be. If I could get anything into the stores, I'd be all for it. But we have those little golden books, the kids ones. Kids just go there and they just grab them and start reading them, and it's just like the books are crap, so you can't even sell them at that point. So I'm it's like the logistics of it alone for like grocery stores, CVS, and look at you. Somebody said that they stopped doing it at his local Walmart, like the those giant 100-page issues or whatever it is. That the people were they stopped doing it because people were stealing them, and they stole the display for the thing too. It's just like there's got to be a way, but it's just for grocery stores especially, or Walgreens, CVS. Their sections just for magazines is so small. You'd have to really chuck a lot of money into it.
Well, yeah, and there's a different for these days going to like your general grocer or your other place that sells periodicals in the open. You have to look at Shonen Jump, the most popular comic book in the world, and it's an anthology. It's a whole bunch of different stories, different authors, different themes. It's got a little bit of everything in there, from science fiction to fantasy to slice of life. There's a little bit of everything in there.
What was it called?
Shonen Jump.
Shonen Jump.
Oh yeah, Naruto and Bleach, which are billion-dollar properties internationally,
okay.
came from Shonen Jump. One Piece. Oh my goodness gracious! So many YouTube shows on breaking down One Piece. You know, a lot of good stuff has come out of Shonen Jump. That's outselling the American stuff. And one of the reasons why it's outselling, people keep the artists and the producers keep looking at the content, going, "How is this beating us?" And it's because you can spend $15 and buy this thick 300-page book
Right.
at your local convenience store, up in the periodicals rack, and there's a new one out every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so that means that if we're going to do that as independent creators, we have to get organized. Like
Now, what
we
that
need,
does
yeah,
percep-
go ahead.
a lot of that comes down to perception. Is this particular product something that is valued and is considered a new hot item and it's in demand, or is it considered something old that in the past, or something that's just kind of throwaway? And those two things right there drive a lot about what this particular question has been about, the local comic shop. And a lot of people are seeing that kind of material, not as hot and in demand item. The reason why they have gaming night, the LCS, is because they also have competitions, because many of those, because they're games. So they do get sales out of that, because you put in $10 or 20 or something, and you will get a couple of starter packs that's given to you. So they're sealed. You're basically buying into play that particular tournament.
So this is nerd poker, basically.
I'm not sure we can call it that. Otherwise, they're gonna start running them all out of town.
No, but I
raiding the gaming shops.
I like that though. Nerd poker. Come play nerd poker.
Nerd poker. Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly what you do. You get five. Let's see, 5 times 2. So yeah, $15 or so, or 10 or 20, and you get so many magic starter packs or a full deck, and you don't know what it is. It's sealed, and that's part of the gamble. But you, the player, have to know how to use those things together. So they're making money on that game night. Well, your comic book, isn't something that has that type of a draw to it. So it better be some other type of draw, and that comic book owner should also be trying to market these. And I think we said that if they're put over in the corner, then you're not marketing them, which goes back to whether or not they are then a marketable product. Well, you open it up and it's got stories that aren't that good, characters that you have known to love, and now they're being torn down. So you don't want to do that. right? So you need something new, and I think that's a great idea, the periodical type concept, because it elevates the price up to something now that has value. If it's something that's under $5, that's still that just little comic book. It doesn't have a great value to it. It's kind of still throwaway. Once you get up to $15, now that's something that, hey, it's $15. You want to, you know, that has more value to it. Just in a dollar sign, not even, well, what's on the inside, because people are also willing to pay more. Going back to the stories, if it's a good story, and that's kind of something that's been driven, that Indiegogo concept, because the art and the stories that are being presented by the Indiegogo creators are things that are making us get more excited. And if we want to buy it, we're going to spend more money on it.
Oh, absolutely. And another idea to consider is moving away from the comic book format and moving towards the magazine format, because heavy metal has weathered this storm like the most well-built ship in any hurricane.
That's questionable. That's questionable.
The last few years they've done horrible, but that's because their content went down in quality drastically, and I stopped buying. I was a huge heavy metal buyer up until about 2010 ish. Then I was like, I kind of started tapering off.
Their rates went down too. And they lost a lot of international talent because of it.
Yeah.
So they're scouring.
Yeah.
They're actually scouring for talent
Yeah. No, it used to be. I remember it used to be a 2 to 3 year wait.
I think they just recently like somebody had submitted something maybe 10 years ago, and it was shot down then, and then they went to him because he did a post about this. I don't know if it was Staz Johnson or another guy who's named Dylan Teague, something that was shot down. Now they said, hey, can you get that ready for us? We want to print it now, because that's how hurting they are by the rate drop. I mean, there's guys that would appear in there that will never appear again because of it. They're like, whoa, I created this value through you of what my rate is, and now you want to cut it almost down to a third. And these guys are like, all right, but you're not going to get my stuff until you get it back to where it's at least compatible or comparable to what I used to get. But that's a whole different story. I mean, it's an idea of being bigger. I get it. I mean, I used to, every once in a while, I think it's IDW that prints the 11 by 17 stuff, as it's seen originally. And I'd love to get my hands on some of that stuff. But
well, the reason why I say the magazine size, which is also a different aspect ratio, it's a 3:4 aspect ratio, whereas comic books are presented in a 2:3 aspect ratio. Right. Is that it's a very standard size, and that's when you're considering something that you have to put up on a shelf, you want it to fit into a space that's already been designated. It needs to fit in there neatly.
Yeah, I may not agree with where you're going in that moment as a reader, whether I want that big of a size and stuff. But I will say, but I will give you this: what is currently happening in the local shops and stuff is that they're chasing demand. That's why they're now gaming shops, and when you chase demand, you're not creating a business. You want to create demand, and I think in that needs you have to think outside the box, and there's other things you have to consider. And that actually is something different to consider in a possibility of creating demand for a comic going to this particular size.
Oh, absolutely. And creators can do a whole lot more to get their product into the local comic book shops. And there's ways that you can do this. You can incentivize them. What you do is you send out a promotional ash can. Now, your standard collector's ash can is about the size of an 8.5 by 11 folded in half. Well, fold that in half again, and that's the size of a promotional ash can. And you send these out. They're super cheap, and there's a certain formula to them. And This is how the comic book companies like Marvel and DC circumvented the publishers of sorry, not the publisher, but the distributors of their day, who were kind of trying to block them out because they were trying to keep their home brands up and running. And so you get these out to your local comic store, and it has some pre-order information, and then that's another type of crowdfunding, by the way, folks. It's pre-order. You have your stuff done, it's ready. Do a pre-order, set it out a few months in advance. Like, hey, this will be delivered, and will be the periodical for this month. And when you have the next one, so yeah, that's another subject. But get the ash can out there. Go look up. Do your due diligence. Look up the comic store. Find comic stores that are listed. Search for them in creative ways, because they're often listed as game stores these days. Try to contact them. Get some sort of personal correspondence to verify that they're actually still there, because this industry is collapsing really fast. And show them your product. And when it might not even hurt if they're a large enough store, like they're a big store. Dig into your wallet, dig into your entertainment budget. Take away a couple of movie trips to the movie theater, and print up some posters and some other promotional materials for those guys, and just give it to them. You got to butter their toast a little bit, the big stores like Mile High Comics and whatnot, and Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash. You can get into those stores real easy. You just got to butter their toast with some promo materials. You got to bring your A game. You got to say, hey, look, I'm wearing my big person pants.
Well, there is something else that could come along and hurt this. Is right now Amazon print on demand does not have comic book size. Right? They don't have that ability yet. But if they ever do,
oh man,
it's going to change the game. I mean, it's just going to change things. Printing on demand, and then you'll just be get your crap ready, and then promote the heck out of it where it's going to be, and hope for the best. But,
yeah, and at that point, you make your your print on demand version is different than your distributed version.
right.
So that way you can hit your different markets, and you create a collectability for anybody who might be interested in that type of stuff. You're not betting on it, but you're creating that space for those people. You can totally do that. And in today's day and age, you absolutely want to get your brand attached to Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
They are the number one market. Well, sorry, they're the number 2 market in the world, right behind Alibaba. And you want to be able to get onto that market. Unfortunately, to get onto that market, you have to pass the Chinese censors. Good luck.
So did you say?
Go ahead, DeWolf.
Did you say you would have like a first run, and then print on demand, so that the collectors had that first run?
Absolutely. Well, see, I'm running my Indiegogo plays out more like a loot crate than it does a comic book buy. So it's really like even at like $50, you're still only getting one comic, but you got this like tub of stuff that's like really cool. Some of it's got uses, and some of it's just there to look pretty. But you get stuff, quantity, and it's quality quantity. For the price you're paying for that. So, and that's something that I often encourage other people is like, look past the final page of your comic book. Where is this? Where is this in your house? Where is this? If it's a kid-friendly product, where is this in your kids' area? What can you afford to crowdfund on a small group to get it into those places? Because it's not just people get focused on getting into the stores. And you have to look beyond the cash register. Where is this in life?
Yeah, that's true.
Where does your product fall?
Well, that leads me to something that I was thinking, and that goes along with this LCS, and that's also getting it into people's hands. And that talks about the bigger story, what it is in people's lives merchandising and things like that, and cross platform. I guess it'd be cross media, different media types. Cross platform is when a game media can go, Xbox versus PlayStation versus PC, which is great because different friends can also get it. So, which means you get another sale once again. And I will point the finger at Marvel and DC because, and I think it was I'm not sure who said it right off the bat that we shouldn't necessarily point the finger at them, but I will because you have the greatest media happening that in this generation, and that is the Marvel MCU, followed by DC. I'll go ahead and give them a mention because this has become a 10 years in the making. You see the documentaries and everything going on, and it makes so much excitement, and we've not seen that. If you go to the comic book store, you don't see anything like this. So there should be more comics that tell the story between the movies. Now you get invested more in the character, a complete MCU line of comic books.
At first, I didn't know what you were talking about, but as soon as you said in between, I caught on. You're talking about these are stories. Sometimes there's been little time jumps, but we could fill in the gaps of what people want to know more about the universe,
Oh yeah.
just connecting movies with comics.
Yep.
It doesn't
So you've
even.
got like Captain America. You could create the adaptation, and of course everybody knows they're going to be looking at the same thing that they just looked at in the movie. But Captain America, for instance, he has the Winter Soldier, and it shows him at the very beginning jumping out of the C-130 aircraft. He dives in the water. He comes up on the ship. He does all this, and then you get the impression these are missions that he's been doing for a while. Where are all those missions? Put out those comic books because we want to read them.
That's a good point. I didn't ever think of that. You're smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The first couple of seasons, the first few seasons of Marvel's Agents of Shield was an excellent example of how one could do that. If they just put it, it's an omaki. It's Japanese, and it's a story that pertains to the main story, but is not necessary to be told to tell the main story. But at the same time, it adds to the main story. So omaki, and this is another reason why manga and anime are paired so wonderfully together, is because you can have stuff that's like in the main storyline, and you got these little offshoot stories, um, that totally pertain to the main cinematic universe. And Marvel could have, uh, not necessarily created more TV shows, but what they could have done is exactly what DeWolf is saying. I'm totally 110% with DeWolf on this. That talk about missed opportunities. I can't go to my local store, and I can't go to Barnes and Noble and go pick up a trade paperback, or go down to my local comic book store and go pick up the latest issue of what happened in between, this movie and that movie, or what happened with this character while they've been off screen for a whole
Yeah.
movie.
Guardians of the Galaxy, all those things that they had to deal with, and in between the one and the other. I mean, and people all of a sudden know who Guardians of the Galaxy are, even if they're not the originals. Uh, completely, and you can't say that this is something that you may not want to do because it changes the the world verse, if you will, because we have multiverse. You've got Marvel 616, which is versus Marvel 9999 is what they call MCU. So you don't have to say, well, we're only going to stick to one type of universe, because there is a multiverse. And then there's the aspect of marketing and copyrights and stuff. Well, it's Marvel Entertainment Comics may be different than Marvel Disney MCU, but if you're in just the comic book office and you're the president over there, you run to Disney and you beat down the door saying, "Hey, we're part of this team of Marvel, and we are dying to write these. Give us the opportunity."
Why couldn't they be almost phone book size monthly, and you got bits and pieces of all the movies that have happened so far? Like you're talking about the in between stuff and whatever. Well, it doesn't have to be Captain America has one, the Avengers have one, Iron Man has one. It could actually be something that you compete with the Japanese market, like you're talking about, where all those books came out of, what was it called, One Choice or something. You said earlier, but I mean, that would be the idea of
Shonen Jump.
yeah, that would be something where you could do on low print paper and sort of like almost a gateway to comics. Use it that way.
Well, yeah. When before my one of my local comic stores shut down, and it was not related because of business practices. The guy turned out to be Uncle Bad Touches. Um,
Lordy.
but when I was there and I counted them, 10 different Deadpool titles, and I looked at this and went, why aren't these all in one giant book coming out, every month? That I've got a giant book of Deadpool, and it could be the big book of Deadpool every month. And instead of having a whole bunch of little profit margins, they'd have one modest profit margin. And to me, I was like, they would actually make more money per expense by selling a big book of Deadpool. I would totally buy it. And, some of the stories could be good, some of the stories could be total garbage, but I would eat that up. Tales of the Justice League, just compile them all. Shonen Jump that stuff. You can have all the the 7 major Justice League characters, and all of their premier titles are there, and you keep your individual legacy titles like Detective Comics, but you blow that one up. Detective Comics used to be more than just about Batman and the Question.
Hmm.
No, right.
Action Comics used to be more than just about Superman. It wasn't just a Superman title. Dan Jurgens did that.
Now, did anyone
And
buy?
I
Did anyone
Mhm.
buy the latest issue of Flash? Because that was jam packed. What was the price point of the of Flash 58?
I don't know.
It was. It had.
But
Oh my God! It had
there's
like 60 pages.
people are not interested in tiny little floppies anymore.
No, I kind of
Uh,
agree. I kind of agree
they
with
want
this.
they want a book that they can squash a spider with.
Speaking of, yeah. Go ahead, DeWolf. You got.
Oh no. Yeah, I just said that they a large spider, not a small one even.
Uh,
Yeah.
Something you can brain a tarantula, at least stun it long enough to get to the door.
Well,
Manny.
they're not thinking forward, and that's the thing. And we're talking Marvel, DC, and people with great big marketing departments. They're not thinking forward about what, like I said before, creating demand and creating a new industry and excitement for something and new characters that are interesting and is going to drive a generation to want to buy comics. Instead, they're chasing an old model or just letting it die because you know what, things are digital, and they're just kind of thinking what people want versus really meeting a demand or creating a demand.
I agree. I really think you need to always have sort of that forward thinking. Don't you think you should, like, if you're going to do it with the movies, right? If you're going to throw spaghetti at the wall and we're going to do villain movies, this, that, and everything, why don't you have that same philosophy with comics? Let's throw a few things at the wall, see what sticks, see what works. I'm sort of guessing this whole 100-page giant in Walmart was meant to be a gateway comic. Meant to get you into your local comic book store, because basically it was just slapping a bunch of things together, you know. But
Well, I think that if you think about it, like if you go from like the Black Panther movie that was like huge, and then you go and look at the sales of Black Panther comics, they didn't they don't seem to have a translation on sales. It's like I would have thought that Black Panther would have been like the most popular most popular comic book series right at that time period, and that they didn't have any kind of pop-up stores at theaters or spinner racks or anything at the theaters. Really seemed like a drop ball, but you don't have anybody like buying Black Panther comics like they're hotcakes. Even the what's that chick's name in the Black Panther movies? His sister, who's like super smart.
Shuri.
Yeah, you don't have like that thing is not blowing the doors off of anything, and you would think that it would with how popular Black Panther was, and it just seems like they're doing more like Marvel and them are doing more to license off their IPs instead of really focusing on the comics anymore. Like they're just trying to they're gonna make comics and everything, but it's just a lot of it's going through the movements instead of actually caring as much about oh we gotta sell this thing and we've got these great tie-ins now we're gonna do this thing over here and it's just gonna be we're going to reinvigorate the entire industry by these movies. And it's just instead of that, you're having comic book shops closing down. You're putting out really crappy comics. Not all the comics are bad, but they're hyping these comics that are just subpar on every level. And you're like, why are you doing this to yourself?
Yeah.
Well, you know who we haven't heard from is Manny. Man, you got anything to add about what you're hearing?
Ditto.
Ditto.
I'm sorry, but it's they just the comics and the movies are not connecting because they're not the same characters. So, like you said, they want to get back on track, start doing the comics that you see on the big screen. You know how dynamic is the Black Panther, and then you read his books, and that ain't the same character. You know, it's just, I mean, all of it. Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor. It's just not the same. So it's a disconnect. You know.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
until they start doing that, and like you guys said, tie it in. You know, you got all this great publicity with an Iron Man book. Continue it into your books. You know, don't be giving us a young black teenager as Iron Man. We
Find,
saw Tony Stark on the screen. Give us Tony Stark.
find people
You
who
know,
can do likenesses too. Some people might
yeah,
want to see him look like Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, I'd be
exactly, exactly. I
yeah.
mean, you got a guy like Chris Evans, which was perfect for the movie. You know, he looked like Rogers. Continue that. I mean, the story from Winter Soldier. I think that's the best Marvel movie yet. I mean, it pretty much you could take out Captain America. That was a James Bond movie. You know, it was espionage. It was awesome. Now do
The
that.
only issue is they're all these stories they're doing in the movies. They're I don't want to say they're butchering, but they're making a turducken out of like so many different storylines they've
Right.
had. Like the Infinity War thing, they already did it as a comic, and they're reissuing those comics, but it's like they're taking so many little things from different comic books that like different storylines and putting them into a movie because
But
they I don't know why, and it's just
they're running out of the '80s. Pretty much all the movies were from the '80s. Those are
Yeah,
all
they are.
they're all the comic lines from the '80s. They've run out of them. What are you guys gonna do now? What's the new thing you guys gonna come up with? I read all those books already. Okay, so I see them in the movies. I just look at them as a what if story. They kind of took the plots, they kind of messed around with it, but it's cool. I'll take it. I'm entertained. Now what you guys are gonna show me?
You
Civil
can't
War 2.
you can't forget that comics are looked down upon though. There's not a Hollywood writer that doesn't look down on comics and go, I could do better than that. There's a huge disconnect between Hollywood and the comic. That's why we go, wait a minute, that's nothing like what we know. Because that guy who did that has such a huge ego, he thinks he can do better. Zack Snyder is one of those guys who thought, oh, I can actually do this even better. And it was so far removed. Batman doesn't have nightmares or visions. You know, I mean, it's so far removed from the original that you're almost taken back by it. Like, oh my God, what did I just see? Why did Batman get out of a helicopter when his planet was in peril? When he came to Metropolis, why didn't he come in his bat plane and try to help? Granted that was not part of the story, but I mean that's how you see him in the first 5 minutes of Justice League is he gets off of a helicopter, and it's just weird. you're missing moments. You're missing moments that could be key, and that's sort of a different topic, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, hey Todd,
Yeah,
did you know that I have some prints that I'm giving out today?
I know that. Where are we headed next?
Well,
So we,
before we head anywhere, or before I would like to, before we do anything else, I would like to give out some prints on your channel to some of your viewers here.
excellent. Let's do that.
All right, Manny, I sent you some pictures. Unfortunately, right now I'm not at my camera area,
Okay, which
but I
picture?
sent you some pictures in Twitter.
Okay, new ones.
These are, yeah, these are the horrible raw scans that I got, but
All right,
they look good on your computer for some reason. They look
all right.
terrible on my phone.
Let me go look. See what you want me to put up here.
And those are the prints that I'm giving out. They're mini prints. They're approximately 5 by 7.
Which ones? All five of these?
All four.
All four.
The
Already.
yeah, the skunk girl and the 3
Uh,
scalpels.
let me see something. Let me see something.
3 scalpels and a skunk girl. New sitcom coming to you from ABC this fall.
While he's looking, why don't you talk a little bit about something that we're all working on?
That's right. We're working on Tales from Beyond the Gate. Speaking of books you can squash a spider with. We're working on an anthology called Tales from Beyond the Gate. We're hoping that it's going to be coming out quarterly, and we're launching our Indiegogo this upcoming February. And the theme of the first one will be horror, so it'll be a whole bunch of horror anthology stories. I know that Todd Mulrooney and myself, Manny, Chester Busby, John Dillard, uh, and I think that just to name a few people that are already putting in their submissions so that we can bring the biggest and best anthology to you, the reader, somebody who wants to enjoy something good. It's gonna be a whole bunch of stuff. There's gonna be traditional folk horror, some supernatural thriller, science fiction horror. I mean, it's going to be scary. That's for sure. Um, and we will be taking submissions. I do believe right now you go through John Dillard Gaming the System. You can find him on Twitter, and Facebook, and YouTube just by typing into your search bar John Dillard Gaming the System.
Who?
And
What's his name?
Hmm?
Say his name
John Dillard Gaming the System.
again. Does he have a channel?
He does here on YouTube. It's John Dillard Gaming the System.
All right, anyway,
I'm
guys,
waiting to hear back from him about a story idea before I invest the energy and time in writing up a script for it and everything. I want to make sure that it works for the format or works for the genre and everything.
Well, yes, and you're definitely going to want. We're working on getting resources to unite writers and artists together because we're getting a lot of submissions from both. And the submission deadline is January 15th of this next year. January 15th, mark that day on your calendar. That's when projects have to be submitted in complete, in full. The story pages can be anywhere from 3 to 12 pages long, and you have to have a cover page for your story, almost like a cover for your book. So
what's the name of that
only
again?
with more leeway.
Because you're missing some information. What's the name of it?
The name is Tales from Beyond the Gate.
Isn't there going to be 2 pros in that?
There is. I do believe we have absolutely nailed down Ethan Van Sciver. He's going to do a 1-page treat to. He's taken time out of his busy Cyberfrog schedule to bring this entertainment to you. And I do believe we have rumors of John Malin doing the same to bring good quality entertainment to you. Yeah. And I'm not fully up to date on who all is
Bill,
involved in the project
right?
as
Bill,
it's been
artist.
growing. That's right. Bill from Argos Creations.
Maybe KJ can put that in there.
Yeah.
KG, I'm sorry, KG. Maybe he can throw
So,
Argos in there. Thank you, KG.
yeah, if you have a horror story, um, it just needs to be finished by and submitted by January 15th of next year. We will consider it. And this is, from what I am understanding, this is a for-profit share endeavor. So people should be able to make a little bit of scratch if the project makes money.
Great. All right, you ready, Manny? Manny, you ready to show what he was talking about? He wants to do a giveaway. Are we ready for that?
Yeah, he's got to.
Hop on the bus, Gus. Don't need to discuss much. Manny, you ready?
Almost. I sent him some raw scans, so he's got to doctor him up just a little bit.
Oh, he's gonna blacken him a little.
Yeah, well, they're raw black and white scans, but unfortunately, the people at the scanning place did not follow my instructions to the letter and give me color scans like I had asked for. So there's a little bit of that threshold error.
All right, let me go to DeWolf for something. I think
All right.
he can talk a little bit about DeWolf. Where do you see the future of this entertainment heading, and what can we do? I mean, how can we impact it?
I actually think that this whole entertainment of comic books is going to go the same way as every other entertainment media is going, and that is on demand, because I can stream what I want when I want. I can go and I can download things, and there's no longer a big cultural moment where Who Shot JR anymore that's on TV. There's so many different avenues that are available, that I think that the big is going away, and that includes Marvel and DC if they don't jump onto the concept. And that being the case, it's what I want from whatever media it is that I want. So that means you go to Indiegogo's, you go to possibly Kickstarter. There's also, I go to my grocery store, and I go to a bookshelf, Barnes and Noble, wherever you can get the media at. And I don't really think it's digital still, because I don't like to read through a digital comic, and very few people. We've been talking about this amongst all the fans who fan speak and whatnot. No one really likes digital comics, and we still like the ability to have paper. I asked Chester one time about the Japanese, because they are very highly technologically using people, and tech is everywhere. That's where they got robots and transformers on the streets. Some days when you see them at these carnivals, and so they still have manga that is paper. We talk about manga and anime; it's still paper. So paper is going to be the thing. It's how you get that paper, and that's the distribution model once again. And I think that distribution model is going to be through all of these different and various channels, and that's where you got to plug into the apps and whatever else you can do to market in all these different particular areas. And I think that's how you're gonna. That's where I see the future of this coming.
One thing that concerns me is with Marvel and their like Marvel Unlimited, or I can't remember what their unlimited comic reading thing is, but DC has theirs, and I get the feeling that they're going to slowly whittle away the comics that they feel are worth printing. So like the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl or Iceman, those things are going to be they're going to go digital only, and they're going to be able to just keep paying the artists and writers, like, I don't want to say minimum wage, but just like a really low wage for each story, and they won't care that technically it wouldn't have sold because it boosts their numbers of how many comics you could have if you just join their app. So you'll have a bunch of people doing the app and so they're going to end up cannibalizing their audience further and further by doing this and just spewing Atari levels of video games or of comic books into that app, and then people are going to go, Jesus, I don't all so much of this is garbage. They're going to check out, but there's not going to be that paper version of more and more comics for them to go to. So you're only going to have that core, and you're going to end up with people going, well, I can only buy this many comics. So like, what do I do to balance? Okay, I want this comic, but it's only digital, but the rest of the digital sucks. So do I keep that subscription going, or do I just cancel that and spend that $20 a month on like one comic line? So maybe it's the Punisher, and you're getting 4 issues a month, but that's all you got.
Yeah, I can see that. That's I can see that happening where you go to only on demand type quality stuff because DC does a lot of this. Injustice was like that for a while, and then they did a Wonder Woman one for a while.
Yeah, yeah. In demand. That's
Yeah.
that's how people are going these days on lots of different media.
They have one that's out now. It has to do with Death of Superman, don't they? It's a weekly thing. No, anybody know this?
I think I bumped into it some time ago.
Yeah, I think it's sort of rehashing that whole era of the Death of Superman and the clone and all that. I think. Not, I haven't looked, but I did look in Injustice because it was there was an artist called Daniel Sampierre, and he was working on that, and I really like his stuff. He's now going to be on a monthly book, but he sort of got his foot in the door that way, and really showed some good promise on storytelling ability, and I think you guys will eventually when you see his work, it'll be something that people like.
Yeah, and now and I mentioned up paper a lot, but there is still digital. And matter of fact, if you can get the new comic person to download a digital book, that's what they want. You give it to them. It all comes down to the customer and how you're going to reach them.
When you look at our society and everybody looking at their phone, it was like a sort of easy thought to go, oh my god, everyone's looking at their phone. I bet we could get them to read comics on their phone. It just didn't play out that way. It just didn't. I don't know if the tech was clunky or what, but there was the AR stuff that was supposed to be tied into all that, and I remember there was a period there for every book you bought, you got the digital version accessible to you too for free. I don't even know if Marvel still does that because honestly, guys, I don't even buy anything that comes out by Marvel. But
I don't know if it's still ongoing, but I believe it is. Like, there's some kind of digital content associated with it. I don't know if it's actually an issue or if it's just, here's some pinups that everybody wants to see a squirrel girl.
Well, and that's something that
that's a
you
bad
can
word
do.
here.
Yeah.
Squirrel girl is a bad word.
There you went and said it again, Manny. There's children. Let's see here. I was going to say, and that's something that creators we can do. QR codes are inexpensive, and you can put them in your book. This falls under incidental advertising because these are free because you got the book. So you go pick up your digital copy, you pick up your landscape and your portrait wallpaper, and whatever digital goodies that you, the creator, can come up with that you're willing to go ahead and give out to somebody as a reward for supporting their local establishment and buying your book. And Marvel did do that for a while. And but it was usually advertised on the outside of the book, free digital copy.
Yeah, I remember that, and that's sort of the AR tied into that. Sometimes it was AR in the front, right? And that was an app all in itself, where you would put your phone over the AR, and the book would sort of come to life. But I can't say that I ever played with it. I did get,
Yeah, that was really cool.
yeah, Brian Haberlin has really sort of worked the kinks out of that on his own, and he does some of that. I forget the name of his company, but he's got a few books. But they're digitally rendered, and they're a little bit different, but they look beautiful. But it's just not. It's comic books, but almost in another. It's almost like CGI comics, you know. It's almost a little bit in between that. Are you ready to do this giveaway, Tank?
Are we ready, Manny?
I was on mute. That's why you guys couldn't hear me. I was saying I'm ready.
Oh,
Darn
okay.
I was ready.
All right. So I'm giving out 4 mini prints, a $20 value. Todd, this is your channel, so I think we should have. Let's see. Let's get Manny white boxed here. So, this one is the sensationally salacious, unbreathable skunk girl.
Mhm.
That's one of the prints, and then we have the apex predator print that is also available, and we have the cover for Scalpel Zero print that's also available. And we have the artwork for the cover page to Simon Says, the Scalpel Zero story that's taking place in Tales from Beyond the Gate. So all 5 of these prints are high quality. The ink is on there good. It won't rub off. You don't have to worry about that. It's a matte. It's a matte finish. It's printed on 110-pound stock. So it actually has some weight to it. It weighs a couple of grams. You can feel it in your hand,
What's
and it's good and thick. Hmm?
there's five. No, there's six, right? No, this is number five right here. I think I know the winner of that one. That's Todd Mulrooney. I think he's the winner of that one. So go ahead and give out the rest. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. How do you want to do this?
Maybe we should have some ignition trivia. We've been giving away via trivia this whole time. Let's do some ignition trivia. Todd, you know what you have seeded on your channel, and 2 people out there. So,
Okay,
do you have any good ignition
yeah, I'll
trivia?
lob a softball out there. The first
All
villain
right.
in issue one. What's his name? This is a softball because I've talked about this character quite a few times. So
All
whoever
right.
gets his name
The
first,
first.
uh,
All right.
will get number one, which is Apex, right? We'll give the first one to.
Oh, they're all going to the same person. So
Oh, this is
we'll
for one person.
yeah, we'll do a random draw from whoever gets the correct answer
Okay, so
before you
one,
give
two,
away the
three, and
secret.
four, and six go to the same person, and five goes to me. Is that how this is going?
Well, no. What I'm doing is I've got one of each
I
of
know, I
these
know.
that's going out. This is a package, so it's a
Okay.
$20 value. That's going out to one lucky winner.
All right. So the villain in the first issue of Ignition, his name is what? So as we wait for people to try to guess or scour the internet, whatever they do, Google. You're not gonna be able to Google
Yep.
it. It's not gonna work.
I think while they're coming up with their answer, we can chat about something to buy them some time. We'll give them a good, I don't know, 5 minutes or so.
Let's get
And
DeWolf to talk a little bit about the beginnings of fan speak and the things that go on Chester's channel. Let's promote Chester's channel a little bit. because that's really sort of a catch-all.
Absolutely.
It's sort of a catch-all where we have some, I don't know, I want to say almost influence. There's a little bit of influence there. We have some connections to some the top tier creators. So let's talk a little bit about how that all started. Did you guys sort of have a committee and figure out, let's do a show for fans, let's do a news show? Talk a little bit about the genesis of Chester's channel, The Wolf.
Yeah, I guess I touched on that at the start of this show, and yeah, Chester just was coming about with the concept about the same time I was, and we used the Lone Star fan group. As a matter of fact, there was so many of us there. ABS had his fan base and his live stream, I should say, and then Mitch and Mike, and there wasn't as many of the streaming artists and creators out there, at that time, or if there were, we didn't know about them because there wasn't this movement that was just kind of kept building and building and building, and more connections being connected between people. And so we found each other over when we created the Lone Star Fan Club under Mike Miller. And so some of us were chatting, and Chester came up and just put in there, would anyone be interested in this? And boom, it was like instantaneous, of course, and I told him I was about to just create my own channel myself to talk about what they were talking about and how exciting this new comics industry was burgeoning. And so from that, we just got together a group of people, and it was 4 or 5 or 6. It was a good number of people, and they were all absolute fans. And we, of course, went with some brainstorming, and come to find out, there was several of us who really had been around long enough and had creative ideas that a lot of things, just started happening. A lot of things came together. Chester, you met him already.
Mm-hmm.
He's working tirelessly, both normal job as well as promoting Fanspeak. And then our Denali, he's starting some writing, and myself, and we then also wanted Fanspeak to grow. So we were talking about, what do we need to do for Fanspeak, because it became very important for us not to just be sitting around promoting. We wanted so many of the creators, and especially the creators who were new, to have a good idea of what fans wanted. What are we talking about? What do we want to see? We've seen so much out there, from your Spider-Mans, your Captain Americas, that are going away. Do we want to see those types of characters again? Do we want to see new characters? And then what do we decide on an Indiegogo? Because there's a lot that happens when you click on an Indiegogo and you look at it to capture your attention. You could have a really great story with some good artwork, but if you choose pieces in a certain way, does it make me stay on the page? Because even now, there's even more and more of them. So that's what we wanted to do. And like tiers and money, like we've talked about tonight. What is that money range that we're going to say, no, I don't like that perk, or there's not enough in this perk, or why am I getting this and this, within this perk too? And are multiple issues, bundled of 5s, is that cool for us? All those things we wanted to be able to tell any of these creators. And there was also so many different ideas going on, like we've been talking about distribution, local comic shops, things like that. How does this help what we now call the comics revival, because we've outgrown Comicsgate. We're bigger than what Comicsgate even started as, because now there's a huge growth of people, some new, but a lot of the old guys, because I haven't bought comics in 15, 20 years maybe, and some of the other ones 15 and 10 years. So we wanted comic books. I've flipped through comic books for all these different years. I have a son, and I liked him when I was his age. Let me go get some, and he can now share in this concept. But I looked at them, and they were awful. So I didn't do that. I didn't buy him comic books yet. So we wanted to be able to share what the fans wanted, and of course, lo and behold, the more we talk to people and the community grows, it so much just continues. The creators bring us in. The creators wanted even more ideas than what we originally, the inception of the show was, and it's been highly exciting, and that's how it all kind of started.
That's kind
That's
of cool.
absolutely awesome.
Yeah. I'm glad I asked because I kind of wanted to know, but I mean,
And I
it's
believe I think it's just about 2 months ago now, so it hasn't been that long,
right.
and we're still a small channel, and but what we wanted to be also, and of course, as we grew, we thought how great it is to become a hub of information for writers and artists and new guys wanting to get in, and because they were moderators. Matter of fact, Chester and Pixel Trader, Thundaro, right? They were moderators on channels, so they sat there listening to these creators day in and day out, and they knew their personalities and things, and the nuances of the live stream and also the comics and creations. How can we bring some of those ideas together, merge people together, have a more active community and a hub for that, and that's what we wanted Fanspeak to be. And Indicron, and then Indicron, Pixel Trader, I mentioned his name. So that brings in together Indicron, and Indicron is now, the comic book shelf to click onto and view all the Indiegogos that are out there, and flip through their pages, and find out if you want to buy one, because we want to promote more of these indie comics, because we need more indie comics, so we get great stories that we know that are out there in the community, versus these kind of bland things that are currently being put out by the big guys.
Well, that brings me to a point because I have bought things from crowdfunding, but I'm only interested in going and looking at comics because I'm not, well, one, I'm not saying anything about the other things, but I don't want to sift through uh, how to make the best, grilled cheese sandwich or any of that. I want to get to just the things I'm interested in, and even if they weren't comics, they would be something. But I don't want to see the next greatest diaper or anything like that. I want to see comics, and that's where IndieCron is awesome because basically it says let's let's group some things over here so that people don't have to sift through. There's a little bit more extra information here. Um, I mean, it's just a little bit easier to read as far as how many days are left and things like that. Um, because you can read it all on one line instead of, and I like that. I mean, it's really smart, and God bless them for actually putting something together that we can sort of promote, we can share through social media, and we can talk about and help him, because there's some expansion going on right now. But yeah, I always uh, sort of got hesitant, you know, as far as looking on crowdfunding just to find the different things. It used to drive me nuts, basically, because there was stuff on there that one shouldn't even be on there. I don't even know what people are thinking. You know, I remember some of the really bad. Oh, really bad. Well, even when it comes to comics, really bad artwork, really bad production value as far as what you're showing me. Um, and you know what? It's God bless those people because I'm sure, like I said before, what if we were looking at a project or a campaign and we're going, this needs a little bit of work, and we come to find out it's this like 16-year-old kid. We're like, oh my God, this guy. If we can get you to just listen to us, take a few things, a little bit of advice, and get your project to just that next level, imagine what you're going to be like in your 20s. You're going to be way ahead of me in your 20s. So I always think about that aspect. I know I didn't mention that yesterday when we talked a little bit about Indicron and where it's headed, but I always think about maybe I'm looking at somebody who's not quite one, they're not quite ready for prime time, but they're not ready maturity level. So they haven't really gone through some of the lessons of how to, storytelling and things like that, or their objective view isn't quite there yet. And I always think like that. Like maybe I'm looking at the next greatest guy, but he's starting out because there's a lot of people whose books, including Jim Lee, if you went and looked at their very first produced work, you'd be a little bit shocked that it got
Yeah,
into comics. So I
yeah,
don't.
or a Kirby, or a Dixon or Grunwald. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean the level of their ability was not quite there yet. So you kind of learn on the job. And these guys all had great stories about how they got their foot in the door. I bugged Dick Giordano for months, and he would let me fill in the blacks. And I even once got to do that. I won't even tell you whose house, but there's a lot of these guys that live in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I used to know Ken Lopez, and he brought me over to somebody's house, and that guy let me fill in his blacks. It was like I was sort of I was awestruck. He's like, hey, if you're, I mean, he liked my work and stuff. He said, okay, so you should be able to do this. You take this page over here, you sit at this desk, and you fill in these blacks for me. I was like, are you for real? Are you kidding me? So this is I mean, a lot of these guys are down to earth. If even this guy is hated in this community, he was down to earth those back then, and he was probably a little bit more of the type of guy who toked a lot more. Let's put it that way. So he was probably a little more chill of a person then. But yeah, he was a real nice guy the time I met him. Okay, so nobody got this question. Ooh, is it beta? That's very, very close.
Oh no.
Oh, somebody does have it. The alpha.
Oh,
Raven Outlaw.
who's a Raven Outlaw? But
Yeah.
Raven Outlaw already has a set of these.
Oh no.
I can upgrade Raven Outlaw. I might have some other prints that I can upgrade you for your correct answer. I will look through my bag of goodies, so to speak.
Well,
But
like,
I think I still have some Skeletor and some Tales from the 99er prints
should we?
that I can toss in, unless they want duplicates.
sh- Well, should
They
we?
did win fair and square.
Yeah, maybe you should let her answer if she'd like something else because she already has these. Oh, Raven said she hasn't won anything
So,
yet. So you must be mistaken.
oh yeah,
her for
no,
one of the-
Raven Outlaw won a print, a Skunk Girl print, last night on Manny's channel as he was doing his 100 subscriber extravaganza.
Oh, so she only
And
won
because
one.
Raven Outlaw has been hanging out and showing up today, that prize got upgraded to a full set of prints. Because we appreciate our hardcore fans, coming back to us back to back 2 days in a row. That's awesome. So, and we're just hoping that Flair shows up sometime tonight so that their prize can be upgraded as well.
Should we do another person winning? Should we pick another question?
Yeah, we can actually. I will. Let's do that.
Okay,
Go ahead, Todd.
Ignition
Let's,
has the ability to do what with his fire? I mention this all the time. He's a cross between, beyond Johnny Storm or Human Torch. Ignition has ability beyond that. What can he do with his fire? What can he create? If you know the answer to that, you'll get these awesome prints, except for number 5. Any other subjects we want to touch upon?
Well, there are some silver linings. The I actually laugh a little bit on the inside because the Bronze Age of comics is coming to an end and it's collapsing, and I chuckle because it's the Sea People uh, so we're it's a changing of the age. The way comics are being done, the way they're being published, the way they're being presented, the way multi marketing and merchandising is about is absolutely changing. And the industry, in order to survive, needs to evolve to adapt uh, aptly new environment. Um, we touched on some really great, awesome ideas in this group tonight, and we've been doing this. Like, oh, geez, we've been doing this all day. It's been running around the internet giving out golden advice. People to make to up their production value, look beyond the last page of their comic, look to where it fits into people's lives, and that's ultimately the game of marketing, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
I want to show you.
definitely.
I want to show you guys something that I was showing on another channel just recently of another marketing tool that I was going to use um, when it comes to ignition. Maybe some people like to see this that didn't see it over on Manny's channel. So basically, with ignition, I did sort of like a strip comic for the internet that you would see only on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram in this capacity where it's just think of it this way that Ignition himself lives on a pop culture cul-de-sac with everything you can think of. So he could be there. He could talk to Fred Flintstone, or he could interact with Stan Lee, or he could interact with you know any character from movies, any actor, any comic book character. He just lives on I called it the cosmic cul-de-sac, where Ignition, where I'm going to show some humor, the humor side of Ignition, and have him have these little weekly like strip comic type thing. And then the idea would be to they were just going to be shown in black and white, and then I would eventually color them all or color them as I go, package them all up, and call it Ignition's Big Book of Parodies.
Nice.
And just another way of just marketing myself. I thought maybe about even using one of the webtoon spaces where they kind of cobble, sort of kayak a bunch of things together. Um, but I wasn't out to make any money. It was just a way of marketing.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and the other one is, let me go a little closer for this one in case anybody wants to read it real quick. But this one he interacts with Groot, and as Groot walks across his lawn, he leaves some droppings. And Ignition's not really sure what they are, so that's all. That's just the idea of this story was, you know,
Todd, you need to white box yourself.
I'm not white boxed.
I don't think so. I still show up.
Oh yeah, you're white boxed. Alerting. All right, can you guys see that? Is it big enough to even read? It may not be big enough on a phone, but if you're on a computer.
It's so meaty.
So yeah, I have one. I talked about this on Manny's show where he's at the communal uh, mailboxes, and all the Captain Marvels from throughout all the universes are all there fighting on whose mail's who. How can we tell whose mail this is? We all have the same name, and it was just sort of a running joke, you know. And I was going to do that as probably one big panel where everyone would have a little bit of dialogue and sort of create it linear where I kind of go around in a circle. The next one, has to do with Todd McFarlane and his useless baseballs that he bought for millions of dollars. And this is, like I said, just an idea of how to get ignition out there a different way. And originally I thought maybe I'll be able to do this weekly. Maybe I'll put one out every Friday. But that's kind of overreaching considering all the different things I'm doing and involved with. Do you think it's a good idea, DeWolf?
Yeah, it sure is. It starts to show the character. It it puts them in a different light. Now there is one problem, and that is I might start thinking this is the way the whole comic is going to be. You know, so you have to let me know as a fan that these are kind of like trailers. You know, not, oh yeah, not sneak peeks or trailers. Oh, what would be the better way to call that? Almost like Deadpool, you know, when they do some of the commercials for Deadpool,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
right, they're
Yeah.
right in there with other things besides just the movie.
So these are parody promos.
Yeah, yeah,
Lead you off the idea that this is anything to do with who Ignition is or what his book's about because it's a pretty heavy book as far as where it starts and where it heads.
right. And where would these be available? How are you going to put these out?
These were just things I was going to do for the internet.
Okay, so they'd be like on your Twitter and such, Facebook.
Yeah, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Okay, yeah, that'd be cool. And you could very easily then explain it. You know, put up a little a banner, or just kind of say, you know, what it was, and then boom, here it is. And it's good. Anything that you can start putting out there to whet the appetite is a great idea, and especially when you have cameos like, you know, Groot and stuff that we're already familiar with, other products and things within our environment. Now it starts bringing us from our world in towards the character's world, and then you got yourself a sale.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so we do have a winner. Eagle 43 has won your prince. He actually has
All
a
right.
humor round
Well,
too, so I'm glad somebody
Eagle 43 already won a set of prints too.
messing with
So
me.
I will dig deep into my bag of treats,
Oh my god.
and unless Eagle 43 wants duplicates, they can always hit me up and tell me their
What
preference.
about
If you
give
guys
to a
want
friend?
duplicates,
What about give to a friend? Like
or if Eagle 43 wants, and if they want to, they can donate their prints to Todd Mulroney,
no, I
creator of
wasn't meaning
Ignition.
no. Somebody that they roll with, maybe somebody that they, you know,
Yeah, you have an extra set if that's if that's your wish.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I do want to wrap
uh,
this up.
just let me know your preference.
So you got to turn your back
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
your shoulder like they do.
So make sure that you contact me on via my social media at or / Tank Ferret Art on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and get me your shipping information. Let me know your username, and I'll get that out to you.
All right, let's go around the room and close out with everyone kind of sharing where they could be found, what they got going on, anything you want to plug. We can do that now. Let me start with Chris.
I have nothing to plug except Twitter, and
Wait
that's
a
just
minute. Don't you have a MySpace page you always plug on my show?
I my original music was getting downloaded too much. I had to take it down.
Vimo? Was it Vimo? No, that wasn't it. Oh,
No,
yeah,
Venmo.
Pinterest. No,
Venmo is some money.
give them your Twitter again.
It's at Last Snow Leopard.
How about you, DeWolf? You got something you want to plug here? Because you can.
You know, I don't really have anything to plug here at the moment. I have been working on something for quite a while, and I like to tease it every now and then. I'm going to first start with the tease from your very own host here. He's listened to me talk about other medias and movies and just tear apart some other plots that I have seen and how they could be better. And he said, "Well, you need to write something better." So I appreciate that. And then along this road, I really have a heart for gaming, and I've been trying to figure out what game I could possibly do for any of these books that are coming out. And the only one that allows anyone to do anything with everything out there would be a role playing game because it requires so much of the imagination. And I have started from the ground up, um, from the smallest thing of mechanics possible, and through everything that I knew from all of the mini games that I've ever played, and also thrown uh, out everything that I've ever known, and said what is completely original. And I think I've found that. I think I found something, a game mechanic that is new and original, and will allow you to play a supers game, which requires a huge range of possibilities. It's just amazing. We have, as far as your standard street level fighter to a super fighter, and then all the powers people can imagine. It's a daunting task.
So
I have
you need
what's that?
artwork. You basically need artwork. You need cards, right? Am I on the right track here?
An RPG would be a tabletop. So
So you need
I am going to need artwork. I'm going to need artwork inside, to make it flashy and stuff. The hardest thing to do in this day and age of RPGs, because you've got your TSRs, your Fantasy Flights, your D20 systems, and all those. It's saturated with how do you roll the dice, draw a card, throw a dart, whatever that it is that makes that game mechanic to to show that the super can hit the villain and on any given turn versus another turn, right? And give the people at home the ability to play with your characters. And that's another thing too. You can come out with all these great comic characters and plots and stories, but when you try to translate that into an RPG, then you have a whole new business that you got to go to, right? Fantasy Flight, D20, are they going to be susceptible to you? Are they going to want to take your character and put in the money and the interest to go ahead and try to create it as a game? So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to say, hey, you have all of uh, these people. We can call it a franchise, right? Ignition himself could be, your franchise, and you say, "Hey, yeah, I want people to be able to play this character on their tabletop. Who do I go to? What do I use?" Well, I wanted there to be a comics gate or an indie comics movement game system in which you could just plug right into and be available to everyone without there being a great big contract and all these other Wizards of the Coast demanding it to be this way, that way, and how much money. So that's the big dream. I've got a good chunk of it done. I am going to be looking at putting art together and everything else, and making it hopefully affordable for everyone as well. So that's the big thing. In the meantime, I'm going to be over at Fanspeak, having fun and talking comic books.
How about you, Tank? Why don't you tell them where they can find you and what you got going on? Plug it one more time. Give us
Well,
everything.
well, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Tank Ferret Art. I'm also on with many of the gamekeepers: John Dillard, Cross Comics, Manny Good Dog Press, Todd of Nation. I'm also hanging out with Chester Busby DeWolf and the crew, the Denali Lama and the Booster, over on Chester Busby's channel from time to time as well. I try to get around and try to spread some love.
How about one of the saints of our gatekeepers crew here? Why don't you tell them where they can find you, Manny?
The Saint.
Yes, you're a very good guy.
Uh, I try to keep a clean show, so you guys can find me at Good Dog Press. We have a clean show over there, family friendly. It's a good fun stuff. You can find me on Twitter, DeviantArt, gooddogpress.net. You can find me pretty much on all the shows, trying to make rounds. getting out there, uh, jumping with Chester when I can on his shows, being with John Dillard on his shows whenever I can.
This is the first
And
time you've been on my show.
well, this is the first time you have actually invited me.
No, this is the first time I wanted to. This is the first show where I had sort of a round table kind of thing, where I
Uh,
wanted more opinions. I
cool.
definitely wanted more voices, and I wanted a little bit more comedy, but Booster didn't come, so there goes
Ah,
that.
there goes. Yeah. Well, we can get rowdy too. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, and I
Yes.
didn't even realize, by the way, everyone, that Chester had a show going on while we
Yes,
were
he did.
doing this, and I did not know because I remember last week it was Fanspeak that was on a Saturday, and I didn't know you had a Saturday show. Knew that that show had to be on Saturday for a reason. I knew the reason, but I didn't know it was
Oh yeah.
preempting something so that there was a normal Saturday show. I had no clue, or else I wouldn't have done
Right.
this, or I wouldn't have done it at that time because now I feel sort of like a jerk, pretty much.
Oh,
I didn't. I didn't realize it right up until I guess about 15 minutes prior. I realized. Yeah, I said, "Oh my goodness, this really is the same time slot." But yeah, Chester has things that going on in his personal life that takes up the time slot that he would normally be doing. But it's the good comics news. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a show that I've been on a few times and I like, and it's an enjoyable show. And it's got obviously whenever you have somebody like Booster in a show, you have some comedy. So it's a fun show for anyone that has never seen Fanspeak. I look around at the names in the chat, and I know these people have. So let me close with this one thing about this community. Everyone here that's on here today is approachable. It doesn't, it doesn't matter. Our level of art or what we have done in the past has nothing to do with who we are. We're trying to bring you fill a void of content that's not there, and we're willing to interact with you. And when I showed you those strip comics with Ignition, having Groot and stuff, I want other people to send me ones that I can draw. If you think you're a really good comedy writer, um, it could be one panel that has a few people in it, or it can be a total of 6 panels, like the Todd McFarlane one. So if you want to write one, or you think you have a funny idea having to do with anything to do with pop culture and Ignition in it, just send it to me or hit me up. You know how to find me. You can find me at Maroney Todd on Twitter, and you can obviously find me on my channel. My name is Todd Maroney. I don't hide behind any kind of other names. You can find me on Facebook. So if you have an idea, I'm willing to draw it. I'm willing to do it, and it has to be lighthearted. It cannot be disparaging or be too heavy-handed. Because I do have a funny one, but to me it almost is a little heavy-handed. It's about going into Rob Liefeld's closet and finding a box of feet. But it's really super funny, and I'm trying to figure out a way to do this and it not be disparaging to Rob Liefeld or any of his characters. So we'll see. So I want to appreciate everyone for coming, and thanks for all the panelists who came. Hopefully you got some cool information. I see some people that showed up late, like Will. I appreciate you coming. Uh, join me again on Tuesday around the same time, and I'll be doing probably a little earlier, probably a 7 o'clock show with me and Chris. Thanks a lot, guys.
thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet.